Hello, book lovers. I'm Peg, the book prize addict, back with a lot of exciting book prize news. It's just been a great week. Uh, let's see. I'm going to start out with some of the things that have been going on this week in the book world, and then get to a new prize that I just found out about that I can't wait to follow. Okay, first of all, Thursday night, the 28th, the Republic of Consciousness Prize for small presses. The finalist was the final results were announced at a bookstore in London. I actually received an invitation to it. I didn't get to go this year. Now it's true, I have been donating to this group because I think it's so worthy of it. And I also got all the books from the publishers to read on the long list as part of my what do you get, the prize for donating or whatever. Anyway, so I was watching carefully. I've been talking in several groups, web groups, talking about them as we read them all, and I really certainly enjoyed this experience. Incidentally, it's headed up by Neil Griffith, who is an author, just published a great book last year, and also he used to have a booktube channel, but I don't know where he is anymore. Okay, so let me tell you, the announcement of the winner was quite a surprise in that there were co-winners. There was Murmur by Will Eves, which is a play on the life of Alan Turing. And he was, of course, the famous mathematic genius, etc. And this is also on several other lists. It's on the Wellcome Prize list. And the reasoning behind that, I believe, is that the Wellcome list has to do with any writing that has to do with health or medicine or things like that. And in Murmur, that he was they call it chemically castrated. He was a homosexual, and they gave him drugs to, I guess, make his sexual urges less. It's very sad, but it was a great book. It took me 3 readings to really get it. So it's one of those innovative type books. In fact, all of these are. So if you like that, I look at them as a puzzle that is fun to solve. And as I said, it usually takes several readings. That was one of the winners. The other winner was Lucia by Alex Phoebe. And now, this is my free copy that I got, but everybody else has a yellow copy, but it's okay. I read it anyway. And it actually also deals with a real person. The Lucia, who it refers to, is James Joyce, famous Irish author, his daughter, who had some mental problems, and from this book, sounds like she wasn't treated all that well during her life. Anyway, but it's also really well written. It has some Egyptian type story along with it that fits in symbolically. And it's also very good. Now, as I said, there were, surprise to all, there were co-winners, and they didn't have to split the prize. One of the followers of the prize, who's on Goodreads, I don't tell who it is, I have an idea who it is, donated enough, several $1,000s, so that they could award 2 prizes. So I think that's great. It's a great group that follows that prize. Okay, so on with that. Let's see. Next we have, I actually read a book that had to do a lot with book prizes. It is called A Ladder to the Sky by John Boyne. Several people have talked about this before, and I really hadn't paid too much attention, but it is amazing. It deals with a young man who's possibly a homosexual, but has relationships with several older men who were gay, who were famous authors. And I'll tell you, this Morris, or Maurice, however you say it, is quite a character. He wants to be an author, and he, I guess you would say, becomes an author. and it's all after the prize, they call it. You know, it's probably the Booker Prize or whatever. But the whole book is the different authors and their interplay and what they do to win prizes. And of course, it's satirical, but it is great, especially for me, the book prize lover. I just loved it, and all the name dropping that was in it and the hints and everything. So that was quite a delight. Okay, let's see. Canada Reads came to a end this week. I had talked about it a lot, and I had asked Laura Fry, the famous Canadian booktuber, to talk a little bit about it, and she gave a really interesting video on it about the fact, and I have to agree that it just doesn't work really well for people to argue about the best book in a group. And it came down to what the book was about rather than how it was written. Anyway, so you need to, if you're all interested in that, and I have to agree, Laura had a good point there. And also, it sort of depended on who was defending it, the book. But anyway, for some reason, it's gone away from my mind which one won. But the last two standing, I think this is the one that was second, was By Chance Alone, a story of a Holocaust survivor who now lives in Canada, and 90 years old, and he made some Audible tapes that went into there. And the other one, I think this was the winner. All of a sudden, my mind's gone. It's called Homes. That's terrible. Homes. Written by a teenage guy with the help of his teacher, who is an immigrant, and it talks about his immigration experiences from Iraq, and then they went to Syria, and I guess somehow ended up in Canada. So actually, well, write in somebody, tell me the winner. All of a sudden, I can't remember. Okay, let's see now. I also want to talk about a new prize I am so excited about. It's called where did I put it? It's sponsored by the Royal Society of Literature, and they have several prizes. I'm not in touch with exactly what the Royal Society of Literature is. Sounds quite literary, doesn't it? Anyway, they have several prizes, but this one's called the Ondaatje Prize, and it looks for books with a great sense of place. In fact, it says here they can be a work of fiction, nonfiction, or poetry, evoking the spirit of a place. I've often said that the place or the atmosphere of the place is one of my favorite ingredients of a book. So I just really am taken to this prize. This is the first time, I guess they've been around for a while, but they actually published their long list. And where's their long list here? I was going to show. I thought I had 20 books. And I was able to find almost a lot of them I had not heard of, but they are on Scrib. If you've heard of Scrib, the online service, it's just wonderful in having books that probably aren't real well known, but are literary. And I found a lot of them on there, some in my library, but I decided I think I'm going to spend the month of April reading those and reporting on them, probably on my Goodreads channel. Actually, my Goodreads name is Peg Star. It has something to do with my actual last name. So if you want to follow, I probably won't talk about them too much, but I am more in the habit of reviewing everything on Goodreads now. Okay, so I can't wait to start with those. But while I also looked, they had a list of their former winners. And it's true, they really do have all kinds of books that show this wonderful atmosphere of place, which I call myself the perfect armchair traveler. I'd really rather read a book that takes me to a place than have the trouble of going out and going there. So anyway, I looked back at their former winners, and they do have. I have two that I'm reading while I'm waiting to start the new list, and the first one is called "The Discovery of France." Now, this would be the only kind of nonfiction book that I would probably like, and I really do like it. It says it's a historical geography from the Revolution to the First World War, and I've started it with a map while I'm reading it, and it goes through how France developed, how the little towns were. A lot of the French people couldn't even talk to each other. It was such a divided, various types of people throughout the country. And there's things about the geography of the place, and this really has me hooked. I'm enjoying this one. And there's another one that won last year that, believe it or not, was a book of poetry, the first book of poetry that ever won the Ondaatje prize, and it's called Mama Amazonica, and it has to do with the rainforest and some ditzy characters, but it really does give the vibes and the feel of being in the rainforest, which I've never been in, but certainly feels real. So I am really looking forward to that, to this prize, and I'll be talking more about it. Next week we have, in the next weeks, we have the Stella Prize coming up, which is the Australian version of the Women's Prize, named after a woman author. It's coming up. I have some of those I'm reading, and I noticed there's a great thing on BookTube this month on reading Australian literature, so I hope to get some of that done. The Man Booker International shortlist will be coming out in the next week or so, and there's several others, but I'll be back to talk about those. Meanwhile, happy reading.